So I don't think it can be understated how legendary this Stephen A. Smith, LeBron James public media beef is because it just hit a whole new level to a beef between a media superstar and an NBA or athlete superstar that I ain't never seen before. It just went complete nuclear today. It was obviously a big surprise a few weeks ago when LeBron James, during the Knicks game, in between the third and fourth quarter, went up to Stephen A. Smith courtside and got on Stephen A. for Stephen A.'s public comments about LeBron James and how his son's placement in the NBA. To quote Stephen A. Smith saying, "You better stop shitting on," or to quote LeBron telling Stephen A. that you better stop shitting on my son. That's what Stephen A. said. LeBron said. And yeah, Stephen A. definitely had some comments that were, being a bit harsh in terms of the main one that I'm pretty sure that got LeBron was saying, as a father, please stop. This was after Bronny James just had a just really bad showing when he got put in against the 76ers in a road game, I believe. He had a just really bad game. And, obviously there's been things said about Bronny James and the whole nepotism thing, kind of short arming or just, fast tracking his way into the NBA. And Stephen A is not the only commentator to say something about this, but Stephen A. Smith, whether you like him or you don't, is the top leading, one of the top leading media personalities when it comes to sports. In terms of the NBA, he's probably the kind of personality. He's on ESPN, biggest platform for sports. He's the biggest personality. He's got a huge platform, the show in the morning, first take, all of that stuff. And whether or not athletes try to say that, yeah, I don't really pay attention to any of that stuff, they're going to hear this stuff, especially when it's coming from a big personality. It's impossible to ignore. So that's what the breaking point clearly was for LeBron, was Stephen A's comments saying, "Yo, man, as a father, please stop." When you hear that, if I were to hear something like that, and I don't have a son, but if I did, that would trigger me. Someone trying to tell me that, "Yo, man, yeah, as a father, what you're doing is pretty shitty to your kid when you're trying to put your kid in the best position to succeed." Even though no one can deny that there was a very sort of nepotism type effect when it came to Bronny James in the NBA. But that confrontation between Stephen A. Smith and LeBron was just so surprising because you don't really see things like that, especially between these two. Because I've never seen anything between Stephen A. and LeBron before when it came to like an interview or anything like that. Stephen A's said over the years that LeBron and him don't really vibe. I think some of it has to do with that Stephen A. has been critical of LeBron. And I guess maybe according to him, some of it has to do with how his placement, how he won't put him above Michael Jordan, whatever. But it felt like after that Knicks game, right after that, the day after, Stephen A addressed it on the first take in the morning in very kind of somber, non-sounding Stephen A fashion. And I just kind of figured that was the end of it. I hadn't really heard Stephen A address that conversation much, besides in a joking type fashion when he was having to talk about Bronny actually playing well in a game not too long after that, saying, I might have been a little bit critical of Bronny James right there. Just things kind of like that. And he didn't want Pops to go after him. So I figured, well, all right, that was kind of an interesting moment, but that's it. But then the big surprise that came before the first take today was, LeBron popped up, was on the Pat McAfee show. Lakers were playing Indiana Pacers. The Pat McAfee show is filmed, aired, whatever, in Indianapolis. So LeBron stopped by. And, when I saw that pop up on my YouTube thumbnails, because I was at work at the time, so I didn't see it. I didn't see it until I got home. I was all like, oh man, LeBron doing kind of an unfiltered interview on Pat McAfee. I can only imagine what this is going to be like. And he just knew one of those topics, just it had to be about, the public beef that had been going on between him and Stephen A. Even though it was seemingly, at its end or reached its climax, he figured, all right, well, what else is there to really say about it? But man, LeBron was firing some real shots at Stephen A, saying that, he's in his tidy whities and no, he can't wait to, pop up on just LeBron's comments, all this kind of stuff to where he's making some comments where even though he's obviously kind of defending his son, saying that, I'm defending my household, all that. The words that he used were definitely the kind of trigger words that are definitely going to get a response from someone, anyone, not just a big personality like Stephen A. And this morning, I just knew after hearing the comments on the Pat McAfee show, I'm like, oh man, I got to tune in and hear what's going to be said on First Take today. Even though the fact that basically at 7 a.m. I got to leave for work, but I just had it streaming on Hulu, listening to while I was driving, and I just could not believe the stuff I was hearing, man. This was insane. This is media athlete beef to the next level, to where if there's ever been something similar to this, I don't know, just because the stuff I was hearing was crazy. Was Stephen A basically saying that LeBron's confusing the narrative, that he's criticizing LeBron James, not Bronny specifically, which I will say this. I think Stephen A, his comments, he actually has not criticized Bronny directly, saying the kid's a scrub, he can't play. Obviously, he's implying the game. Everyone knows from some of the games he's played that he hasn't played well. But Stephen A's comments, the ones that was the really trigger one a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, whenever it was saying that LeBron, as a father, please stop, to where when LeBron said saying that you gotta stop shitting on my son, now he wasn't shitting on his son, he was shitting on LeBron. But even still, I think those words, like I said, when you tell someone to stop as a father, that would trigger anybody because those are real fighting words when it comes to how you're managing your parents and all that. So I think there's this kind of a confusion between the two in terms of what the real beef is here. Actually, I think Stephen A has said that this issue has never been with Bronny. He's rooting for him, good kid, whatever, the typical bullshit that you've heard from everyone. But he's just right that his whole thing has been about LeBron. But I think Stephen A's comments about LeBron were a bit just kind of low belt, maybe a little bit unnecessary. But whatever. I think LeBron kind of took it to a next level when his comments on McAfee. That was something where I was like, oh, okay, it's time for the real war now. And man, Stephen A. Smith, his retaliation on First Take, like I said, I could not believe what I was hearing. The whole thing going into why he doesn't consider LeBron to be better than MJ. I mean, the kind of the stuff that you hear before, but the way it was delivered this time around, it was like, oh, this is some real personal stuff right there. And then going into, other things like in terms of, I'll save the big one for last, saying, why weren't you at Dwayne Wade's what was it, Hall of Fame enshrinement or whatever it was? The one though that was just like when I heard it, I was like, God damn, was him questioning why he wasn't at Kobe Bryant's memorial in 2020 when it was at what was still known as Staples Center. And I actually remember that back in the day because at the memorial service, when you had the speeches from Diana Taurasi, Gina Ariamo, the UConn coach, I think that's his last name, Shaq, and obviously the big one, Michael Jordan, and they were panning to everyone that was in that lower row in terms of the big stars, in terms of, obviously Kobe's parents. You have Vanessa there, obviously, and they were showing all the NBA superstars, coaches, notable people like that. And I remember thinking, is LeBron not there? They're showing like James Harden, Tim Duncan, Russell Westbrook, a bunch of guys, Chris Paul, but they never cut to LeBron. It was a really kind of surprising thing, especially the fact that LeBron was a Laker at the time. So I did always think for years that I guess LeBron was just never at the memorial service, and I always thought that was kind of a weird thing. But it became news to me when I guess when Stephen A said that ended up being false, that LeBron was in attendance for Kobe's memorial. He was just in a different spot, I guess. Maybe he was in one of the suites that were upstairs or somewhere else, wherever in the building. I'm glad that finally got addressed to me, just because every time I think about that, I do wonder, why wasn't LeBron there? That was kind of interesting. But man, that's one of those things where you bring that up, you better have your information correct, because the fact that he got that wrong, saying, questioning why he wasn't at Kobe's memorial, and then the fact that a rebuttal had to get put out during the show saying, I messed up. He actually was at the memorial service, just in a different spot or whatever. He even posted it on social media on Instagram where he had to put his quotes saying he apologizes, but he stands by everything he said. To me, I think Stephen A. Smith's rant was legendary. Whether you agree with him or not, it was just kind of next level. Like, holy crap, this is actually happening. But that Kobe Bryant comment, man, that was one of those where if you're gonna say that, you better get that information right. But with something as because that topic, someone's death and you questioning why they weren't at the memorial, that was one where you should stay away from that subject, which he even said. So that was one where it's like, God damn, to go there, That's crazy, and that's kind of the most memorable part about that whole thing was you saying that and you being wrong. So that's one where you got to be careful what you say. But regardless, that was an epic rant. This whole back and forth between the two is just unbelievable. Like I said, I've never seen anything before between Stephen A. and LeBron, even though Stephen A's alluded to how him and LeBron don't vibe for whatever kind of reasons. But just the stuff Stephen A. said about LeBron just being kind of a two-time phony, smiling or just stab you in the back or whatever, just all the different stuff that's happened. And LeBron's not perfect by any means, nor is any NBA superstar, but we've never heard this kind of stuff from him, especially from a big media personality. And this stuff has just been a trigger and just a talking point for everyone. The people that hate LeBron, which there's plenty of those, this is a story that's been so big, it's been sort of showcased on Fox News and all that, but it seems like a lot of the players on NBA podcasts are, caving up for LeBron, and why wouldn't they? Because they're these like the basketball king for years, the face of the NBA. Guys owe a lot to LeBron James, one of the greatest players of all time. So it's easy to see where the side should be taken up on this one. And of course, the whole sort of media cronies for LeBron, like Nick Wright from Fox Sports and all that. So the sides that are be taken on this one is pretty predictable. I do really wonder what Shannon Sharp's allegiance is, because as much as he loves his boy Stephen A, the way he's caped up for LeBron over the years is just kind of interesting. But I think this has got to be, and like I said, if there's been a bigger media beef, sports media beef like this, someone's gonna have to let me know. I have to do my research because this is crazy what's developed between Stephen A and LeBron. To where anytime now there's a Lakers topic that LeBron has to talk about, or just any LeBron topic specifically, it's must-see TV in terms of what Stephen A is gonna say, because there's no going back from a rant like this. Hey, you know what? Sometimes things surprise you. Maybe one day they'll have a sit down interview where they'll talk it out. But this is something where this is some nuclear next level stuff to where I don't know how the hell you ever have someone like LeBron's agent, Rich Paul, go on that show, anyone closely affiliated to LeBron. Like, this was just crazy. And the most amazing thing to me is that I never would have thought, like back in the day when Stephen A. Smith first joined First Take, in terms of full time, this is around like 2011, 2012, when I remember when he popped up on that show with Skip Bayless. It was just like that show really did take off just because the dynamic between the two, those two explosive personalities, it was something special in TV to witness. I remember those shows when he would come on in 2011, and those shows were unbelievable. But all of this, that is to say that I never would have thought I'd see the day where Stephen A. Smith took Skip Bayless's place as LeBron's number one hater. And I'm not even saying that Stephen A. Smith, in terms of basketball, is all that critical LeBron. He even said that, look, it's not going to affect how I talk about LeBron in terms of his placement in NBA standings, having him as the second greatest of all time, his greatness as a basketball player, all that. But obviously, in terms of this stuff that's getting a little personal, you got to say that it's next level in terms of being, whether you want to call it a hater, a critic, or just an adversary, media adversary. It is on that level, but the fact that he overtook Skip Bayless just like that is crazy. I know Skip Bayless isn't in the sort of national TV spotlight anymore, but we always obviously knew that during his time on TV for well over a decade, he was going in on LeBron for years. The amazing thing is, though, is that as deep and sort of nasty as Skip Bayless got in a mostly basketball context, LeBron never responded, never acknowledged him, which was pretty took a lot of effort, but I think LeBron knew that if he ever gave that stuff life in terms of LeBron speaking about it, he would give Skip Bayless even like triple the power. So that was actually pretty smart on LeBron's part, just because Skip Bayless, I mean, as entertaining as some of the stuff with him and Shannon Sharp and Stephen A back in the day would be, the guy's sort of critiques of LeBron and just sort of the nasty venom of it would be pretty damn ugly. I was like, I even felt bad kind of supporting the stuff by watching it some of the time. But he's probably like, God damn, man, all these years, 2 decades of criticizing LeBron, I can't get a mention. But Stephen A. Smith, and just like from 100 to zero real quick, becomes LeBron's number one adversary to where actively addressing him. And I think eventually he's gonna address him again sometime soon after the rant he went on today. Just crazy level stuff. So that's amazing how Stephen A. Smith is LeBron's number one adversary, and Skip Bayless is probably like, what the hell, man? I've been at it for years and I can't even get a public mention. That's crazy to me. So that's amazing. This beef is amazing to everyone that's commentators on other podcasts, some other like stuff, people that used to be in the media saying this shit is embarrassing. We need to stop it. Man, fuck off. This stuff is amazing. This is the kind of drama we love to see. Do you want to be analyzing OKC, Thunder game film? Nah, I ain't trying to listen to all that. I'm all for the drama. And this stuff is good just because we've never seen beef on this kind of level. In terms of who's winning it, I I've got to say that Stephen A. Smith had an amazing rant today. I thought it was really good, but I just think the fact that you bring up that Kobe thing and you got it wrong, that's one of those where it's like, that's just a tough one, as good as what he said was. And the whole LeBron thing, I think Stephen A. implied that it was whole orchestrated in terms of him having someone ready to film the camera and LeBron looking up when the camera was filming, kind of giving that away. That's kind of weak to me, and that's in that sense. But like I said, if someone says as a father, please stop it, that just hits a little bit home. So I do think overall, LeBron is winning this one as good as Stephen A's and as entertaining as Stephen A. Smith's rant was. But hey, this to me, this shit is just the beginning. I can't wait to see where this goes for here. Again, all of you people who used to be in the media saying this is embarrassing and need to stop it, well, why don't you go talk about something else then? Go talk about 2025 draft picks, OKC, game film, all that. Because I'm all here for this legendary beef between Stephen A. Smith and LeBron James. And I personally hope the hits just keep on coming. Because, like I said, on the way to work today, listening to Stephen A. Smith's rant live, my mind was blown. I was actively saying, holy shit, this is unbelievable. Ain't never heard nothing like this before. And that's true because we have definitely never seen anything like this before.